Everyone thinks inflation is about prices going up, but that's only the smoke, not the fire. The real blaze starts when a society tries to pay for what it can no longer produce, and then convinces itself that printing paper is the same as creating wealth. In 1923, a loaf of bread in Berlin cost 200 billion marks. Housewives pushed banknotes in wheelbarrows to buy cabbage. Newspapers printed on both sides just to use up the worthless paper. The official story says Germany's hyperinflation came from war reparations and reckless printing, but that's the convenient explanation. The deeper truth, the one hidden in the ledgers, was energy. Coal, steel, and labor had been destroyed. The mark didn't collapse because of too many zeros. It collapsed because the economy's engine ran out of real fuel. Now jump to 2025. Europe again faces an energy shock. Gas contracts renegotiated, electricity rationed, industries shutting early for maintenance. Politicians call it a temporary crisis, a side effect of geopolitics. But we've seen this movie before. When the Weimar Republic lost its coal fields in the Ruhr, it did what modern states do after sanctions or wars. It borrowed from the future. Today, the same logic hides behind energy transition funds, resilience packages, and green bonds. Then it was paper marks. Now it's digital euros, both promises backed by declining physical output. Hyperinflation isn't an event. It's a process of denial. It starts when leaders mistake money for energy, symbols for substance. In 1922, Germany's central bank governor, Rudolf Havenstein, argued that printing more marks was the only way to keep factories open. He wasn't lying, he was desperate. The same logic drives 2025 policymakers who say we must subsidize consumption to protect households. They know arithmetic can't be negotiated, but politics demands the illusion of control. Look closer and you'll see the same mechanics. A nation stripped of its energy backbone, forced to buy at ever higher prices, paying in its own weakening currency. In the 1920s, Germany printed to pay foreign creditors. In 2025, Europe issues debt to pay for imported gas, wind components, and security guarantees. The script is identical, only the costumes have changed. So when you hear officials assure you that inflation is under control, remember Havenstein's words in 1923. We are compelled to go on printing. Otherwise, we stop paying. Inflation wasn't their plan, it was their confession. To understand how inflation becomes destiny, you have to start not with money, but with power. In every empire, from Rome to Weimar to Brussels, the printing press is only the symptom of a deeper structure. The alliance between the state, the banks, and the resource owners. Money is just their language. The real sentence, the one that locks a nation into crisis, is written in energy. After the First World War, Germany's economy was a hollow machine. The Treaty of Versailles, 1919, had amputated not just territory, but the heart of its industrial metabolism. Coal from the Tsar, iron from Alsace-Lorraine, and access to global markets through punitive reparations. The sum was absurd, 132 billion gold marks, payable in foreign currency or raw materials. Germany couldn't pay in coal because France occupied its mines. It couldn't pay in gold because its reserves were gone. So Berlin did the only thing left. It paid in promises. That's how the Reichsbank's printing press became the national ventilator keeping the corpse breathing. Between 1919 and 1923, the money supply exploded from 29 billion to 497 quintillion marks, a number so large it loses meaning. But each sheet of paper was a political compromise, a way to keep paying war widows, rail workers, and civil servants while pretending the economy still produced value. Every banknote printed was a day of social peace bought on credit. Now move the calendar to the 2020s. The European Central Bank was founded with the opposite goal, stability. Its statutes, written in 1998, banned direct financing of governments. But crises rewrite charters faster than treaties. In 2008, after the global crash, the ECB started quantitative easing, a modern euphemism for controlled money creation. In 2020, during the pandemic, that control became unlimited. Trillions of euros were conjured to pay for recovery, transition, and resilience. None of these words describe production. They describe survival. By 2025, the architecture looks eerily familiar. National treasuries issuing debt, central banks buying it, and energy imports draining the system. The same triangle that doomed Weimar now sustains the Eurozone, only this time the coal mines have been replaced by solar fields, the reparations by carbon quotas, the foreign creditors by global bond markets. What we call green finance operates on the same principle as post-war reconstruction loans, borrowing today against an energy future that might never come. The engineers of this system know the arithmetic. In Frankfurt, in Brussels, in Paris, they understand that monetary stability rests not on central bank independence, but on real production. Yet policy keeps separating symbols from reality. The ECB issues liquidity, governments issue guarantees, consumers issue faith. Together, they form a monetary mirage that can only exist as long as the energy inputs keep flowing. In 1920s Germany, coal was the bloodstream of the mark. When coal stopped, money died. In 2025, the bloodstream is gas, lithium, and imported energy credits. And as their flow tightens, the euro's pulse weakens. Inflation is not the disease, it's the body's fever, warning that the metabolism of Europe has been broken by design. Systems don't collapse because of bad intentions. They collapse when mathematics outgrow gold, real income, or trust. The mechanism of inflation was built long before the crisis, and if you trace the wires, they lead not to the printing press, but to the energy meter. If this helped you see how money and power intertwine, drop a comment and share it with someone who still thinks inflation just happens. Every inflation begins with applause, because at first it works. In 1921, Berlin was alive again. Cafes were full, theaters reopened, traders made fortunes overnight. The government printed, wages rose, exports boomed. Foreign buyers loved cheap German goods. One British newspaper called it a miracle of recovery. But it wasn't a miracle. It was arithmetic delayed. The mark's fall made exports competitive, so factories roared again. But the profits weren't wealth, they were vapor. They existed only as long as the currency kept dying. People confused motion with growth. That illusion is universal. In every crisis, the first phase of monetary expansion feels like a rescue. The numbers go up, GDP, wages, asset prices, everything seems to revive. After the 2008 crash, when central banks flooded the world with liquidity, stock markets soared. After 2020's lockdowns, governments printed to keep economies alive, and for a brief moment, it felt like revival. Money rained, energy prices stayed low, and people believed we'd found a way to create wealth without limits. Weimar believed it too. By mid-1922, new millionaires filled Berlin's nightclubs. Speculators borrowed to buy real assets, land, factories, shares, because the faster the mark fell, the richer they became. Artists painted with champagne. Housewives speculated on foreign currencies. The same psychology drives modern markets. When cash burns, everyone runs into anything tangible: real estate, stocks, crypto, even electricity futures. It's not greed, it's instinct for survival. But illusion requires complicity. The press in 1922 called inflation temporary dislocation. The Reichsbank governor insisted printing was patriotic, a defense against unemployment. Today's narratives are identical. Governments call debt-funded spending support. Central bankers rename inflation transition volatility. The vocabulary changes, the logic doesn't. Society prefers a pleasant lie to a painful truth, that you can't print energy. There's a strange euphoria in decay. It's the feeling of living faster than the future can catch you. In the early 1920s, a mark lost half its value in days, but citizens kept buying because tomorrow it will be worse. In 2025, when power prices double or bonds lose value, people spend because they've stopped believing in tomorrow's stability. That's the real sign of systemic inflation. Not rising prices, but falling time horizons. Nobody saves, everyone trades seconds for safety. The illusion phase is also when the hidden beneficiaries consolidate power. In Weimar, export magnates and foreign creditors quietly transferred wealth out of the collapsing mark into hard assets abroad. In modern Europe, it's energy traders, financial intermediaries, and funds with privileged access to credit who profit from volatility. The middle class once again becomes the fuel, its savings inflated away to keep the structure standing. The arithmetic is merciless. When money grows faster than output, someone is consuming without producing. And that someone is always closer to the printer. In the 1920s, the crash was already coded into the party's rhythm. Every glass raised in the cabaret carried the sound of paper rustling in the Reichsbank's basement. Every stimulus package today echoes that same rustle, only digital. The illusion of prosperity is not a lie. It's a loan from the future, signed in confidence and paid in trust. When trust breaks, arithmetic returns. But for now, the lights are still on, the music still plays, and most believe it can last.
That's always how the third act begins, with laughter just before the silence. By late 1923, Germany's numbers no longer described reality. They mocked it. A kilo of butter cost 3 trillion marks. Workers were paid twice a day so they could run to the bakery before prices doubled again. Newspapers printed on both sides, then on cardboard, then stopped altogether. What ended wasn't just a currency. It was a collective illusion that paper could replace production. The fall didn't happen overnight. For months, officials still held conferences, experts still issued statements, the Reichsbank still printed, 50 printing houses running 24 hours a day. But arithmetic doesn't negotiate. When coal shipments stopped and reparations were demanded in gold, the mark reached the event horizon. Each note printed destroyed the value of the next. The system crossed into a zone where more money meant less wealth. That's the moment when mathematics broke politics. Every hyperinflation follows the same pattern: denial, acceleration, collapse. At first, printing is temporary support. Then it becomes necessary liquidity. Finally, it's emergency stabilization. Those words sound familiar because you've heard them in 2020, 2022, and now 2025. When central banks buy their own government's debt, they repeat Havenstein's fatal argument: we must, or the system stops. But systems don't stop when printing stops. They stop when trust does. In 1923, when the mark's final value evaporated, Germany didn't reform its currency by miracle. It did it by anchoring money to something real again. The Rentenmark, issued in November 1923, was backed by land, industrial assets, and a strict limit on issuance. Suddenly, prices stabilized, not because of new faith, but because scarcity returned. You can't fake scarcity. Arithmetic had forced honesty. Now look at 2025. Energy shortages ripple across Europe, government bonds tremble, and central banks confront the same paradox. To print is to inflate, to stop is to implode. Arithmetic again sits at the table, silent but absolute. The energy transition subsidies, the strategic autonomy packages, the temporary price controls, each new measure adds another layer of paper over shrinking physical output. The math is identical to 1923, only the medium has changed from ink to code. When reality intrudes, politics looks for villains: speculators, foreign powers, unpatriotic corporations. Weimar did the same, blaming profiteers, foreigners, even farmers. But none of them caused the collapse. The culprit was the simple ratio between what Germany produced and what it owed. Today, Europe owes energy to a world that won't sell cheaply, and it pays in promises that buy less each month. There's always a final week, the moment when everyone understands simultaneously. In 1923, it came when a tram ticket cost more than the tram itself. In 2025, it may come when electricity bills exceed mortgages, or when governments realize debt service consumes all tax income. In that instant, ideology evaporates and the ledger rules. When mathematics breaks politics, societies rediscover that wealth isn't numbers. It's energy, trust, and time. The mark learned it in fire. The euro is beginning to feel the heat. When the smoke cleared in 1924, Germany awoke poorer but sober. The middle class, once the backbone of the empire, was gone. Their savings, pensions, insurance policies all vaporized. Those who held gold, land, or foreign assets became the new elite. It wasn't just an economic collapse, it was a redistribution of reality. The debts vanished, but so did the trust that glued society together. Out of that void rose both resentment and radicalism. Hyperinflation didn't bring Hitler to power immediately, but it shattered the faith that democracy could protect people from arithmetic. Now look around Europe a century later. The names have changed, but the mechanism hums the same tune, only quieter, digital, more polite. Instead of presses, we have servers. Instead of paper, we have balance sheets. After the crises of 2008 and 2020, the European Central Bank created trillions of euros from nothing, not as catastrophe, but as policy. Bonds became the new marks. Their value rested not on coal or gold, but on the assumption that tomorrow would always resemble today. That assumption is breaking. By 2025, the energy crisis has exposed what the numbers concealed. Europe doesn't produce enough real energy to sustain its monetary promises. Wind and solar help, but they can't replace the dense, dispatchable power once supplied by cheap gas and imported oil. And so, governments borrow to subsidize electricity bills, to cap prices, to protect industries, just as Weimar paid wages to miners who couldn't mine. Each new subsidy feels like compassion, but functions as dilution. The echo of Weimar isn't the price index, it's the logic of dependency. Then, Germany was trapped by foreign reparations and energy loss. Now, Europe is trapped by its own green transition and global supply chains. Both systems relied on belief that paper could bridge the gap between consumption and production. But when energy costs rise faster than productivity, the bridge collapses under its own numbers. Modern finance hides this collapse behind complexity. Derivatives, carbon credits, green bonds, these are the new paper marks, designed to simulate value where energy is absent. Each is a promise to deliver power, growth, or stability later. But later is the most dangerous word in economics. Weimar learned it the hard way. Tomorrow is the day arithmetic collects its debt. There's another echo too, the social one. In 1923, the poor had nothing left to lose, and the rich fled into assets. The result was the hollowing of the middle. In 2025, the same quiet erosion happens through inflation that's only 8%, rent that doubles, or savings accounts that yield less than reality. You don't need a wheelbarrow of euros to feel hyperinflation. You only need a paycheck that buys less every month. And as then, the hidden beneficiaries remain the same. The banks that create the credit, the energy cartels that receive the subsidies, the investment funds that arbitrage volatility. Inflation isn't chaos for them, it's business. In Weimar, exporters grew rich while citizens starved. In modern Europe, energy traders and financiers thrive while households are told to reduce demand. History rhymes with compound interest. The moral is unchanged. Systems fail when symbols outgrow substance. You can print currency, you can print bonds, you can print promises, but you cannot print energy, trust, or time. Those are earned, not issued. Every empire believes it can outwit arithmetic. Rome tried it by clipping silver coins. France tried it with paper assignats. Weimar tried it with marks. Today, Europe tries it with bonds and digital liquidity. The illusion is always noble. Protect citizens, sustain growth, buy time. But time, like gold or oil, is finite. If you're hearing this in 2025, understand something simple. The system isn't collapsing because people are evil or stupid. It's collapsing because its symbols have detached from substance. You can't heat a home with spreadsheets or feed a family with policy statements. Energy, labor, and trust, those are the real currencies. Everything else is a mirror that eventually cracks. The Weimar Republic didn't die from inflation alone. It died from the moral exhaustion that inflation creates, when truth becomes flexible and everyone learns to lie a little to survive. Prices lie, budgets lie, even money lies. And once society accepts that, the line between survival and corruption fades. You begin to live in fiction. Look around. A century later, we again call debt investment, rationing transition, and subsidies support. It's the same vocabulary of denial, polite, technocratic, data-driven. But arithmetic doesn't care about language. It waits. Every megawatt unproduced, every deficit disguised, every euro borrowed to mask the gap, all of it adds up, quietly, mechanically, without ideology. History's final lesson is merciless but fair. No one escapes the balance sheet. When symbols exceed substance, reality reclaims its share, through devaluation, austerity, or revolt. The mark, the assignat, the bond, all fall when they forget what they represent. If there's hope, it's in remembering. To rebuild money is a measure of real value, not a substitute for it. To tie our economies back to what is grown, mined, and made, not what is imagined. To see energy not as a commodity, but as civilization's bloodstream. Because when energy runs dry, printing presses become confessionals. Arithmetic never forgets. It only waits for us to stop pretending.